Far out in the ocean, where the water is as blue as the prettiest cornflower, and as clear as crystal, it is very, very deep. So deep indeed that this is vaguely scientific. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I am Derek. And he's got who's-its and what's-its galore. Hello, Jim, the scientist.
This one's an accelerometer.
Yay! And you want thingamabobs?
Done.
Our guest this week is David. Hello, David.
Hello.
I was waiting for that.
This is a show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day, Jim.
All right. The alveoli are the tiny little air sacs inside of our lungs where gas exchange occurs, and human lungs in particular can have over 450 million alveoli.
That's too many.
Is that like ravioli?
It does sound like that, yeah.
It does.
This time it's not far too many, because you need a lot of surface area to do gas exchange.
Oh. It's far enough.
Yeah, apparently. We're not dead, so...
You said gas exchange?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right, because whenever I go to, like, Sam's Club for gas, like, sometimes I go in the other lane, but they have those extenders, right, for the pump?
Yeah.
So you can actually go to the other side of your car. You need a lot of, surface area for that.
Yeah.
It's petroleum.
Yeah, gas exchange. Well, you exchange it for money, but same,
right.
Okay.
Same kind of
And
concept.
you can exchange which side of the car you can connect to because they have the extender pumps.
Yeah, not everybody knows that they have those.
Very few people seem to know that.
Well, it's 'cause, well, they have that rule where you can only go in one direction, and then people think, oh, I have to be in this one lane.
Right, yeah.
No, it's I'm torn because it's kind of like the zipper merge problem, overall people would benefit if more people knew how this worked, but I directly benefit from being one of the few people that know it. So where is the ethics in there?
I've found that zipper merging is catching on, at least in my neck of the woods.
It's possible that like the younger generation is because they're actively teaching that more now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I still don't see a lot. I still see, going to the merge point and then merging, and then everybody who's stuck in the right lane yelling at you because they think you're doing something wrong and really they're being dumb.
And then there's that one semi that always just sits in the middle of both lanes so that no one can get around it. Just to
and that's illegal there.
It really is.
I keep seeing so many posts that are by people who are, I would say, dumb, saying this whole like, oh, the merge point is up. It says get in the left lane. Do you think that it's lying or something? And then like, I want to point out, usually there's also a sign that says merge at the merge point.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane until merge point. We are way off topic.
Yeah, we have a show to do, I think, but I mean, we could also, just talk about, like, educate the public about how to merge properly.
I mean,
I was on topic. You were talking about gas exchange.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should talk instead about something else, I think. We should talk about our first question, which comes to us from John M. M as in Mercury, probably not what it stands for.
What a good planet. Well, actually, it's the worst one. But...
We're not talking about planets today,
Sorry, John
Jim.
Mercury.
That's a very controversial statement, Jim.
I'm not sure it's that controversial at all.
Are you allowed to just assign the worst planet?
I mean...
I think Jim does that every day.
Yeah. I don't get paid to assign it, but I do it out of the goodness of my heart.
Mercury's the worst planet.
Yeah.
We all know what the stinkiest planet is.
Yeah. It's Venus.
It could be. I don't know.
I've never smelled it.
I mean, my assumption is that it's probably Venus because of all the sulfur, but I assume the joke would end up being Uranus, or Uranus, I suppose would be.
Well, it would have been funnier if you pronounced it Uranus, because then it would have made...
Yeah, that's why I corrected myself. I was like, wait, that's not how the joke works. What was John's question?
So I would like the listeners to write in at this moment before you continue and let us know what you think we're going to be talking about this episode. And if you're using context clues, you're doing it wrong.
If you're using context clues, you'll never get it.
You'll never get it. So question 1 from John M. Do mermaids lay eggs or have live birth?
Wow.
Yeah, not planets, not gas exchange.
No. Boy, none of the things we've talked about so far, except maybe the alveoli. Because mermaids do live in the water.
Because they have lungs?
Yeah, they might have lungs, yeah.
They might have lungs.
You know, a long time ago, we talked about some of the body parts of a mermaid. And I remember, I think, if I'm remembering myself correctly, that I came down firmly on the mermaids being mammals camp.
Oh, that's been my stance for years, and I do remember bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm like, dolphins, whales, mermaids.
Yep.
Okay, how do you define a mammal?
So I'm thinking you have body hair. I'm thinking that you have mammary glands.
Well, I want to, before we go on the hard line of saying that mermaids are mammals, which I still argue that would be my interpretation of a mermaid, but I've also allowed for the possibility that they are fish or reptiles in my research for today's topic.
3 middle ear bones.
Oh,
yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, that differentiates mammals from reptiles who only have 2 bones in their middle ear. Also, apparently a broad neocortex region of the brain, which that I didn't know, but
I don't know that we have a lot of data on the inner ear bones of mermaids.
That's true. I don't know anything about the functional ear of a mermaid at all.
But do you know about their reproductive system? That's what we're going to get to.
My first thought is that even if they're mammals, there are a handful of mammals that actually lay eggs. I think, 2? Is that right? The echidna and the platypus, right?
Are there only 2?
Well, I'm going to look that up too. Which mammals? Monotremes are that's the order of mammals that lay eggs. And so that is echidnas, platypus.
Huh. Well, I thought there were more, but I couldn't think of one, so I guess there was only those ones.
Yeah, very few things apparently that are mammals lay eggs. But that being said, are mermaids monotremes?
Okay, so you listed traits that they have that are mammalian.
Yeah.
And, but while we're on the topic of egg laying, I mean, do mermaids objectively seem to have any traits that would preclude them from being mammals?
I mean, the tail.
Well, I had thought of that before, and again, I'm open to this discussion interpreting mermaids as non-mammalian.
Mm-hmm.
But my sticking point when I argued that they were mammals was that we look at the tail and describe it as a fish tail, but I also would cite things like sea lions, seals, other aquatic mammals, and manatee.
Yeah,
maybe their tails are more similar to that. But if they are like a scalene kind of fishtail, then I would say, that does kind of make them not mammals.
Okay, well, I have some authority here because I work with mermaids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I am a mer handler.
A mandler?
Well, are their tails fishtails?
They have scales. Yeah, they're fishtails.
Well, another important aspect of them is, do they have horizontal or vertical tail fins?
Oh, that's right.
They tend to have horizontal tail fins.
Okay.
Because that was a hallmark of mammals, right? The horizontal tail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because dolphins have horizontal.
They do have, scales. And also, they have other fins. Like, they sometimes have dorsal fins. And then they have, I don't know what they're called, but the little side fins.
Oh, yeah.
Pectoral fins.
Yeah, pectoral fins.
Well, there's also pelvic fins on some fish.
Yeah, there's pelvic fins too. I mean, so there's variation there, and that's kind of what I'm getting into is mermaid is not a single. I mean, this is a broader category than people understand.
Yeah,
like fish.
There are many different kinds of mermaid.
There could be a very varied class, order, genus, species, structure to the mermaid clade, is what you're saying.
Right, and that's what I've observed, just from what I've come across. Because there's river mermaids, there's ocean mermaids, and there's variation there. And one thing that I've noticed is some mermaids have belly buttons and others don't.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
Well, that actually is a really important detail because the ones that have belly buttons would have to probably be placental mammals.
They'd have to be placental mammals?
Yeah.
Because the belly button would be indicative of an umbilical. Jim, you say it.
An umbilical cord.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would imply a live birth.
Yes. Now, that being said, if there are different genuses and perhaps even orders of mermaid far enough up the phylogenetic tree, there could be an order of mermaids that does egg laying in much the same way the monotremes do.
So the ones without belly buttons might be egg layers, or would they have to be at that point if they don't have one?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know. It's possible, we didn't even consider this, that maybe in those particular cases, the umbilical cord attaches underneath where the scales grow in. And so we just can't see it anymore.
Yeah. So it could just be like a matter of visibility.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, you have to consider how much of the mermaid's physique and form is actually functional, because the top half is a lady, but like they have been known to lure sailors and unsuspecting men and children or whoever looks tasty to them to their death by drowning. I mean, like, could this be a case of this is simply ornamental? Like, this is just a lure?
Oh, like an anglerfish.
Like an anglerfish, right?
That's an interesting possibility.
I remember that idea because we based mammal on lungs, hair, and I mean, not specifically lungs, but that was, I'm adding that for a point I'm about to make. Mammary glands, hair, and then the fact that they appeared to have mammalian kind of lungs and not gills. But that was based on the fact that we often see depictions of mermaids sitting on land, but we don't know that they aren't amphibious. And in fact, most information suggests that they can breathe underwater, even though I posit they may not be able to.
I think it's interesting that they would have that sort of evolution to them to lure sailors to their death. And it not be functional in some way, because I feel like there would have to be a reason for that to happen beyond just like a predatory reason, because they could just, kill whatever they want.
Well, it could also be a courtship sort of thing, like a lot of birds with plumage.
Is it possible that perhaps, maybe we've been going about this all wrong, maybe mermaids are actually a subspecies of human that have returned to the sea and done away with their legs?
Like whales.
Kind of, yeah.
Or not a subspecies of human, but like
yeah, but they did return to the sea.
Okay, so I took an approach to this that was kind of ignoring studying mermaids specifically, because I wanted to know, how do we know that dinosaurs laid eggs? Short answer, spoiler answer, we're actually not completely 100% positive that every dinosaur did, but we can make a pretty educated guess.
I was going to say, because we found dinosaur eggs, so I was really curious where that sentence was going to go.
The point is how we discovered that dinosaurs laid eggs. And one, we found fossilized eggs, and we found fossilized bodies of dinosaurs with eggs in them. There's that. But also, when we look at other dinosaurs that we didn't find the eggs for, years and years ago, we started looking at the skeletal structure of similar species. So we looked at them, they looked reptilian, and we noted similar, notably pelvic structures. The reason that I bring that up is if we look at humans, if we look at the pelvis of a human, there is a birth canal. There is a place for the baby to come out.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of times mermaids are depicted as having a similar skeletal structure as humans. So if you look at the pelvis and it is similar to a human, it is a decent guess that they may give live birth similar to humans. But that doesn't mean that that has to look like that, because even if they don't have that pelvic structure, if you look at whales, which also give live birth, they have a vestigial pelvis, which is less similar to humans, but we can then look at other aquatic mammals and say, well, they kind of look similar to whales. This is how we inform our speculation about how to study a species we do not have a lot of data on.
Right. That makes sense.
So if they lay eggs, do you think they're like big old ostrich egg type things, or do you think it's more like caviar?
I would think so. Well, if they were laying eggs, and if they were more closely related to something like a mammal or a reptile, I think they would be kind of, I don't know how big they would be, but I think they would be more like a bird egg kind of thing, or like a reptile egg. Now I'm sort of stuck on the frog egg idea, because you said amphibians, and I'm like, I wonder if they just like, which is not that far removed from like caviar, I suppose.
Well, I want to bring up that this is why I said I'm allowing for the possibility that mermaids are not mammals. Though again, I still maintain that they are. But there are also fish who give live birth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so bull sharks, blue sharks, hammerhead, and lemon sharks all give live birth. And to varying degrees, some sharks are what is called viviparous. They essentially give live birth, but there's also ovoviviparous. An example of this is the great white shark, which I still kind of think it gives live birth in a sense, but the difference is that it carries the eggs inside of its body, and the eggs hatch inside the body. It's a midpoint between egg laying and live birth. So there's some examples of how fish can do it. And I just to kind of round out everything else I have here, I stuck on looking at aquatic mammals like whales. And this is just, I didn't know how this worked, because the fact that whales have to hold their breath all the time is existentially terrifying for me. I was like, how do whales give birth without the babies drowning? And I learned that whales apparently give birth tail first, and the mother instinctively pushes the baby to the surface to get air immediately after it's born. I looked at seals and sea lions, which both give birth on land. And as I said, mermaids are often depicted sitting on land, so there's nothing actually saying they couldn't give birth on land. However, the myth of mermaids is often attributed to sightings of manatee. And I wanted to look that up because manatees do give birth underwater. And I guess the calf instinctively swims up immediately after being born as well. So it is entirely possible that mermaids could function like any other of these things.
I'm so interested now in where platypi lay their eggs. And I think one of the most interesting things about monotremes to me is that they were just such an ancient order of mammals, and they're also sort of cobbled together looking creatures. I mean, the echidna doesn't look too weird, but the platypus is so weird that people thought it was a joke. And mermaids are cobbled together, and they could be considered something like a joke or a prank.
Well, that there are mermaids that were like in the traveling sideshow things. There were
right.
mermaid skeletons.
Wait, hold on. I'm Googling where do platypi lay eggs? But I accidentally typed in mermaids, which is not helpful. Oh.
Well, actually, if you get an answer for that would help.
That's true. The female platypus lays eggs in an underground burrow that she digs near the water's edge. You know, mermaids are always hanging out on those rocks. Maybe they're keeping an eye on the eggs that they laid in the underground ledge.
It's possible.
Or the underground burrow.
Or they're sunning themselves because they're reptiles.
Oh.
I did not exclude the possibility that they are reptiles.
Well, there's another thing is, do we think they're warm-blooded or cold-blooded?
I would argue warm-blooded because I argue mammal. But
I think you're working backwards logically, though.
Well, absolutely, I'm working backwards logically.
So I will throw in my hat for warm-blooded because I've seen stories about mermaids where they are found in places that are not tropical, where the water's temperature is quite a bit lower than I think a large reptile could be sustained.
Interesting.
But I might be wrong about that.
I don't know this off the top of my head, but it's typically cold underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have amphibious reptiles?
I mean, there were a lot of oceanic reptiles during like the time of the dinosaurs, but
yeah,
not so much
alligators.
Now. Yeah. The trick is if your water's warm enough, it doesn't really matter. But I'm thinking of places like the
turtles.
Oh, turtles, yeah. I'm thinking of places like the North Atlantic, or like the areas around Norway and Finland and Denmark and whatnot.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
A lot of stories of mermaids come from like the kind of Scandinavian area, which is typically colder.
Yeah.
But there's mermaid stories all over the world.
Are mermaids birds?
I don't think so.
I was just thinking of penguins, and I was like, wait a minute.
Oh, man.
I don't think they're birds, because they don't have any kind of feathers whatsoever. Unless their tail scales are actually feathers.
I don't like how close to legitimizing the misconception of sirens being similar to mermaids you're getting. And when I say legitimizing, I mean making wild assumptions and ignoring a lot of facts, I suppose.
I'll tell you what I've talked myself into. I've talked myself into the idea that mermaids are, if not monotremes, then related to them in some capacity. They lay eggs, they lay them on land, and when they are up on the rocks, they are both guarding their eggs and also trying to lure their sailors to their death to feed their young.
Okay, but why? So you're saying they're monotremes because they lay eggs, but I'm not seeing the evidence to support that they lay eggs.
True. I'm just telling you what I've talked myself into.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Mermaids can be sirens.
Well, I believe that.
Not like Greek sirens.
They can't be tornado sirens.
I saw a mermaid be a siren one time. She went, woo, woo, woo.
Well, that's why I specified Greek siren, because I assumed that that's what you were gonna do.
Well, I don't know what the sirens sound like in Greece. I've never been there.
Yeah, they it's gasoline is not gas. I learned a fun fact that is only tangentially related to this because it occurred to me while we were talking about umbilical cords that whales must have umbilical cords, and I learned that they do. I also learned that whales produce milk that is over 50% fat.
Oh, interesting.
I never thought of whale milk before, but I just listened to some outtakes that Jim was toying with, and we had a whole conversation about elephant milk. And so that got me on that topic.
Well, that makes sense because it's basically got to be from concentrate, right? Because you're immediately adding water.
Oh, interesting.
Man, I wonder how thick that is.
I just read that it was over 50% fat, so pretty thick.
If you're underwater, yeah, if it was normal milk, you couldn't get any milk. It would just immediately dissipate under there.
Well, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, they probably have to like latch on and like they suckle, I'm sure.
Whales have a milk ejection gland.
Mm.
So when the calf is ready to feed, the mother whale ejects milk into the water.
Oh,
so I actually think Dave's right that it would have to be concentrated.
That's interesting.
See, I'm smart.
Oh yeah.
People don't know.
People don't know.
One of my favorite things about the show is learning new things like that.
Yeah. Are you ever going to use that? No, but it's interesting.
If I ever have to use it, then I feel like I've made some really interesting choices. Well, with all those delicious eggs out of the way, I regret that choice. Anyway, we have a really fun intermission segment today. It's Oopsie Daisy.
Oopsie Daisy.
During the late 1800s, there was a theory put forth by farmers, land speculators, and even some scientists that were very eager to settle the American Great Plains. The plains are semi-arid, and indeed were referred to as the Great American Desert during the 19th century. However, as people began to move west, they noticed a change in the climate. Throughout the last half of the 19th century, the plains became wetter, they got a lot more rain, and the theory was that rain follows the plow. They thought that as people moved into the region, it would become wetter and more farmable. Of course, many people quickly moved into the area to the detriment of the indigenous population and began planting crops and building settlements. For years, this proved to be a viable way of life for many individuals. Scientists continued to study the climate of the plains, and they put forth many theories as to why the climate got wetter as people moved in. One of the major theories was that plowing the soil released moisture from the ground, causing greater cloud formation, and hence the saying, the rain follows the plow. However, what no one seemed to realize at the time was that correlation does not imply causation. An abnormally wet period just happened to coincide with the United States westward expansion. Now that we have many years of climate data, we can look back and see that the Great Plains go through cycles of drought and rain. This rush to colonize the Great Plains was bookended by one of the worst droughts ever to strike the region in U.S. history, which ultimately led to the Dust Bowl. Unfortunately, this was one oopsie daisy that cost a lot of people their livelihoods.
Well, now I feel weird about doing the silly voice for oopsie daisy.
I mean, it was 100 years ago. It's fine. I always find that so interesting because they were so sure that it started raining on the plains because people were moving there, ignoring the fact that Native Americans have been living there for thousands of years. So, you know.
I didn't know that they thought that. So that was interesting to learn.
Yeah. So I initially looked into the Oopsie Daisy because I was looking at stuff for the Dust Bowl, because I know that the Dust Bowl was exacerbated by repeated plowing of the soil. Basically just powdered the top layer and it was able to just blow it away. And then I found that out and I was like, oh, that's even more interesting.
Okay. You summed it up with correlation does not imply causation. I mean, that is a through line with this segment.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. Well, that was our oopsie daisy. Hopefully we don't do too many more of those.
Hopefully we don't make a new Dust Bowl.
Yeah. But in the meantime, before the next Dust Bowl, I think we should talk about our second question for this week, which comes to us from Dak. What F-tier superpower would you take? I want to clarify, I said F-tier as in Folgers.
F is for fantastic, right? So I can pick a fantastic superpower.
I guess so.
He just said it's for Folgers.
Oh,
it's for Folgers.
Oh,
yeah. What Folgers tier? So it has to be on the tier of Folgers.
Oh,
I should have picked a different word.
I think the ability to.
You probably shouldn't say the brand name Folgers.
Yeah.
Folgers, if you want to send us a few bucks for name dropping you, that would be great. I think I would probably use my Folgers-based powers to always have some fresh coffee for my French press.
Okay. I'm just gonna move on from there.
You opened it up. You said, what Folgers powers would you want?
I shouldn't have. Well, no, so I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about is what I consider an F-tier superpower is something that is superhuman or paranormal, but useless.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
That's how I kind of interpret it. So like it is still technically a superpower, but it doesn't really benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
So like the ability to appear in other people's dreams that they won't remember.
Whoa. That's great.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that a lot.
It is a good one.
Like you can tell them whatever you want, they won't remember it.
If you had omitted the thing that they won't remember, I would have been like, oh, but if you can appear in people's dreams, like you could like communicate to them or try to sway them, but specifically the dreams they don't remember.
Yeah, it's completely useless. You can't.
I mean, if I could tell off a few people in their dreams, I would feel a lot better.
Okay.
So, oh, that's fair. That'd be catharsis.
Yeah,
you could the ability to abuse people with impunity. Maybe that's not a good. That's like a villain.
But you're right, though, because they won't remember it. So it doesn't do anything to them. It just makes you feel better. It's exactly what Derek said. It gives you that catharsis.
This is Jim's villain origin story.
This is Jim's. We've had several of those on this show.
He's already justifying.
Well, let me say, because that's kind of similar. It wasn't originally, but now that we've talked about it, it's similar to one that I came up with, which was the ability to travel back in time into a pocket that cannot affect the present, in which you can have a shower argument with someone who you thought of what to say to them later, and it doesn't change the past, it just gives you catharsis. But it can also go horribly wrong, because you can go back and then it turns out they have a better comeback that you didn't see coming.
Oh, and it's like a one-time thing, so you can't re-go back and have a re-argument with them?
Yeah, that's why the shower argument's generally better, because you can assign
right
the straw.
You can do the other
argument.
Person's argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can intentionally make them very bad arguers.
I'm great at arguing with people I made up.
It's like that Seinfeld episode where George comes up with the comeback.
Yeah,
later,
the
and
jerk
then he
store.
goes the jerk store, and then the guy is right out with another comeback to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very good point. We have talked about this concept off air with some of our friends before, which is why I thought it'd be fun to do it on this show. But one of the things that we always kind of end up doing is being very critical of whether or not the superpowers end up in F tier, because like if they have any utility whatsoever, they have to be bumped up to like an F plus or a D.
Ah, I see.
I always think it's interesting how many mental gymnastics people end up doing to say, what could you do with this power? I'll give the answer that I gave the first time somebody asked me this question. And it is the ability to accurately predict a coin flip, but only after it has been called and there's no chance of changing your answer. And my thinking here is that, so a coin has been flipped and everybody calls it in the air, and then somebody has it on the back of their hand covered, and you can then know it's going to be tails. So you can say that's going to be tails right before they reveal that it is tails. And I think the most you can get out of that is people going, oh, neat.
Yeah.
The ability to always have sticky hands.
Mm.
That would be paranormal. So it counts. Okay, that actually kind of matches something I wanted to bring up, because this conversation actually kind of makes me think of the Uri Geller era of James Randi debunking psychics.
Oh, okay.
And this is a little reductive, I guess, but it's Uri Geller, and I don't care. The ability to telekinetically bend spoons, like very weak telekinesis, is like technically a superpower, but there is a kind of famous one of somebody who claimed to be magnetic. And he would do this thing where he'd go on stage and he'd take his shirt off and he would like stick metal objects to his chest. And James Randi debunked that by coating all of the objects in some kind of powder, I think maybe baby powder. So they would slide off of the clearly sticky substance the man had put on his chest. Or even just that it would adhere because of sweat or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But that made me think about this question. Because what if you actually just were magnetic and small metal objects could stick to you? Is that a useful superpower?
See, it's like mildly useful because like maybe if you're working on like a car, and you just kind of like you won't drop a tool.
Yeah, or you stick like all the screws on your arms so they don't roll away.
Yeah, like you can not use one of those little magnet balls. You just use your arm.
Yeah,
you can just use your arm is a magnet ball.
I feel like that's better than the spoon bending. I mean, like Uri Geller's power is basically just to ruin silverware.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, that spoon's useless now. Good job, I guess.
Now you owe somebody money.
Yeah, like I could have used that spoon. I could have had some cereal.
Yeah,
and now I need a different spoon.
Oh, Uri Geller, now I have to bend this spoon back to use it. I'm mildly inconvenienced.
What if your superpower was the ability to unbend spoons that Uri Geller has bent?
Specifically that Uri Geller has bent?
Yeah.
That would be that one spoon more useful than Uri Geller's ability. Exactly one spoon.
Yeah.
Per.
Yeah.
I will open it up. I will say any psychic that can bend a spoon, you can unbend it.
Okay.
You can't bend spoons. You can just unbend them back to their...
unbend.
Yeah, original shape.
Now, here's an important question, just because of your wording. Do they have to have been psychically bent?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
You can only undo the psychic bending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was understood. Sure.
Well, speaking of psychic, I have another one. The ability to accurately predict when a toaster will finish toasting.
You could be right there.
Yeah.
You could be right there. Yeah.
You could be right there with your tongs and just go choop, right out of the air.
I know I'm not the only one who has done this. I may be one of the few people who have done this. I'm not sure. But I'll stand there and I'll be impatient waiting for my toast. And I'll keep pointing at the toaster, being like, now. And sometimes, because I do it repeatedly, sometimes I'll get it. And I'll be like, oh, if somebody just walked in right there, that would have been really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Or mildly impressive.
The ability to point at a traffic light and like change it, but like it doesn't change right when you point at it. It changes like right after when you put your hand back down. Yeah. And so it looks like, you were close, but not quite. You didn't quite.
I actually had that exact power. Now, it wasn't for the impressive reasons, but the power to change a traffic light. But I did put the caveat that the other light has to go through its yellow to red cycle first. So it will give like a 2 to 3 second delay.
Oh, you can trigger the sequence.
Yeah, exactly. You trigger the changing sequence. So I'm right there with you. I agree. That would be a helpful superpower.
What about the ability to smell like whatever you want?
Oh, that could be used for camouflage.
Okay.
It could? How?
Could theoretically be used to like mask your scent if you're being tracked.
Oh, I thought he just said smell whatever you want.
I thought you said smell like whatever you want.
Yeah, smell like whatever you want.
Okay.
Change your smell.
I thought it was just like, if it smells unpleasant in here, I could just smell like grape soda or something.
I mean, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what... No, I mean, I think you could probably train your mind to do that.
That's true.
Just imagine. No, smell like it. Like, you can walk into a place and just smell like cookies, and somebody would be like, it smells like cookies in here, and you could quietly to yourself be like, I know it does.
Those aren't cookies. That's me.
There's no cookies here at all.
I fooled you.
Get hired by a movie theater and they'll have you walk around outside smelling like fresh popcorn.
You could get some work. Yeah.
I wrote down one that I think is probably one of the most useless ones that I could think of, and it is the power to know the name of any specific color.
The name of?
Yeah.
What if they don't have names?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, then you name it.
Yeah, you get to name it, and that's like the canon name.
Ooh.
Yeah, if anyone else develops that power, then they see what you named it, in much the same way that the cooperative players of No Man's Sky get to see what you've named planets.
These ones are in my D tier. I think they're a little too useful. The ability to instantly clean the clothes you are currently wearing.
Ooh.
It's specific, but it is useful for like hygiene and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And the other is I can make things disappear by putting them into my pocket.
Oh, interesting.
So they have to fit in my pocket, and I have to not want them back.
Oh, you don't get to have them back.
No, I can only make them disappear.
Okay.
So they're destroyed, or
I don't know. They go into the ether.
The Shadow Realm.
I don't have the power to understand the power.
There's some guy in El Paso that's like, why is there a whole carrot in my pocket?
It goes into somebody else's pocket. Oh, that's good.
That reminds me of one of the ones that I wrote down. It's like a pocket dimension, but I can only put things in it if I haven't touched them in a year. And then the act of me picking them up and putting them in there does not count towards that. So if there's just something that's been sitting on a shelf for 3 years, I can put that in the pocket dimension and it'll store it if I want it back. But once I take it back out, then it has to be another year before I put it back in.
Is the pocket dimension portable?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a room in your house.
It's just a room in your house. That's called a storage unit.
Well, I should say it's not like a room. It's like a portal on your wall that you can go into. It is not a structural component to your house.
What about the magic power to temporarily turn any door into a closet door?
Oh, interesting.
Does it alter space?
Temporarily, yeah.
So it opens up to a closet?
It opens up to a closet.
Is it the same closet every time?
No.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't stick around.
Yeah.
You could just create dead ends.
You just create dead ends.
That could be a fun parlor trick, I will say.
Be a fun parlor.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it have to be a door that you open?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking you could use it to evade people if they were chasing you, but if you have to open it.
No. Yeah, and if you're in the closet, and you close the door on yourself, it's still, if anything's in there, it stays a closet. So somebody could just come up and open up the closet.
So it's a closet until you leave it. And then
you have to close it from the outside to make it not a closet.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What if you are in a closet and you open the door to another closet, and then, you start by changing a door into a closet door, and then you go inside that closet, and then you change the door to a closet door so that you are now trapped in a Matryoshka kind of closet in a closet.
I would say if you have this power, probably you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Probably you shouldn't do that.
That seems like a good way to just starve to death.
That might have been just somebody had that power. We never heard about them.
And they disappeared.
That was the ultimate fate.
Yeah.
He just he was trying stuff out and he did that. And he was like, well, how do I get out of this? And that's the end.
Yeah.
We never heard about him.
Someday someone will develop this power again and they will open the right closet and they will just find a skeleton.
That's what happened to DB Cooper, actually.
This sounds like a secure, contain, protect.
Yeah, kind of.
Like an actively harmful superpower. Yeah, no, that's a question for this rating system. So F tier is specifically just useless powers. Should there be another classification for powers that are just actively harmful to the user?
Well, I don't know. Is it perhaps that my definition of F tier was wrong?
No, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, should we have another classification? Is there a tier below F?
I don't know what comes after F.
I'm gonna say G, because
G. Yeah, but then we don't have an E tier.
I don't know why we skip E.
Could be roll tier.
That's fair. I get that joke.
Like MVC2.
Yeah. That's a kind of a deep cut for this show.
Yeah, I like the idea of superpowers that are actively... Actually, I have one I wrote down that is actively harmful to the user. And it is the power that if somebody hits you, the spot where they hit you explodes.
It's specifically your power, though. You are volatile.
Yeah, your power is that if somebody hits you, then your revenge is that that part of your body explodes on them.
I mean, it is a superhuman ability.
Yeah.
It counts.
That's good.
And it is actively harmful to the user, so...
Right. I think we have to say that F-tier superpowers are not actively harmful to the user.
I am inclined to agree.
Just because it opens up a whole world of possibility. Because there's any number of things that are bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's any number of things that are bad for you.
Right. Like, it would be very incredible to be able to just create a black hole, right? Where you're standing. But, that would be terrible. So...
That would also be incredibly powerful, which means it doesn't fit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be very powerful, but it would be immediately harmful to you and everyone around you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was reading about a superpower. This is a slightly different tangent, but I was reading about, I think it was a DC hero whose power was that they could turn into stone, but they would just be a stone statue for like an hour. And then they would turn back into a person. They'd have no recollection of what happened because they were just made of stone for an hour. And if one of their limbs got broken off or something like that, then they would just have that limb gone. That seems pretty useless on the whole. I can't think of a good reason to do that.
I cannot think of who this character is.
Yeah, I have to look it up again. But I guess like if you're hiding from somebody... that would be a good way to like hide because they wouldn't expect you to be made of stone.
There is an episode of Wolverine and the X-Men, which I don't hear anybody talk about, but I think it's one of my favorite animated X-Men shows, which is weird because I didn't watch it originally because I was like, it was Wolverine. Why has it got to be about Wolverine? I like all the other X-Men, but it's like weirdly not about Wolverine. I don't know. Anyway, there's an episode of it when I believe it's Nightcrawler is on a ship and he's with a bunch of fugitive mutants who all have like basically useless mutations. So like their superpowers are not very good. And I don't remember all of them except for like Nightcrawler's asking them, what can you do? And they're like, oh, I can do this. So it's not super helpful. And he goes to this one who holds his hands out and this goo starts dripping from his hands. And he says, I make things sticky.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. I like that guy.
Well, they ended up, because he actually like excreted it and could like project it. So they ended up doing a thing where there was like a big hole in the ship and they learned that he could seal up the ship with this goo, which is more useful than just your hands are sticky.
Mm-hmm.
That was years ago. I don't remember all the context for that.
That reminds me of another hero that I think was like a one-panel gag in a Justice League tryout comic thing. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think his name was Arm Fall Off Man or something like that.
Yeah.
And that seems like a
Arm
useless
Fall
power.
Off Boy.
Oh, Arm Fall Off Boy. That's even worse.
Yeah. Yep. His arms come off. They're detachable.
The only way that could be worse is if his name was Arm Fall Off Lad.
Arm Fall Off Lad. I feel like I didn't think of this earlier, but I feel like I need to bring up the Mystery Men, which is a comic franchise that is a bit more ridiculous, but the movie is a bunch of people who claim to have superpowers, and it's sort of ambiguous whether or not they actually have any superpowers. And the one that I think is probably the most famous is the Invisible Boy, who can turn invisible when no one is looking. And in the movie, and spoiler alert for Mystery Men, if you've never seen Mystery Men, they end up using that ability when there is like an electronic eye that will incinerate people if they get too close to a door. And he stands up and he tells everybody to close their eyes, and they all look away, and he turns invisible and is able to get to the door without the electronic eye seeing him.
Mm.
And that's why that's not an F tier.
That's why it's not F tier.
Yeah.
Because,
Another one that I wrote down, which I would really love to have, is immunity to biting your own tongue or lip or cheek.
There's a very specific immunity.
Yeah, but I think we all want it.
Does that make it higher than F tier?
I mean, I don't think so, because it's not something that you can do any kind of anything with. It's just like beneficial to you. And it's not even something that you would get use out of every day. Like, we don't go around biting our tongues every single day. At least I don't.
Sure. Ooh. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just so situational.
Yeah. Sort of in that same vein, I also put immunity to stubbing your toe.
I think that's better.
Mm.
I feel like I stub my toe more often than I bite my tongue. And that's like protection from outside external danger.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's the opposite.
Okay. I feel like the ability to not stub your toe is too good of a power. That's such a weird thing to say.
No toe stub lad.
No toe stub lad.
He'd make it on the Justice League.
Why are they lad?
I don't know. There were a lot of superheroes who took the name Lad, like back in the 70s or thereabouts, and what a choice.
I mean, they had to have some variation on boy.
That's true.
That's true. I mean, yeah, that's probably what it was, is somebody came up with it once thinking, oh, there's so many, like, Superman, Superwoman, Superboy.
Yeah.
Oh, Super Lad, that's unique. And then more people were like, you don't see that a lot. And now there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, Super Lad isn't as, like, because Superboy, that's punchy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's even got the word superb in there, just like it's a little Easter egg for all of us. But then when Aquaman wanted a sidekick, everyone's like, Aqua Boy? Are we going to do, just do a boy for everybody? That doesn't seem very good. But then Aqua Lad rolls right off the tongue. That sounds like a cologne.
Sounds like I was going to say, sounds like a bottled water.
Aqua Lad by Armani. Like,
see, we got,
what's that?
Element Lad, Brain Lad, Lightning Lad.
Brain Lad.
Lad.
Smells like a mermaid. Aqua Lad.
Ooh.
Smell like anything you want with the F tier superpower. Smell like Aqua Lad.
If you could smell like anything you want, you could smell like Aqua Lad brand perfume, and you could attract mermaids and have them take you back to their nest where they have their young to find out if they were born live or hatched from eggs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in that scenario, if you found that out, I mean, you would immediately be killed right after. So it might not be worth it.
I'm pretty sure mermaids eat people.
No, so some are carnivorous and others are herbivorous.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if it correlates to which ones have belly buttons and which ones don't.
Ooh.
I just don't have enough information on that.
I think they actively hide that information.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do. It's
Mysterious
a survival
species.
It's a survival adaptation. I mean, they need to be somewhat mysterious because they're familiar with the destructive ways of man.
Yeah, they are critically endangered.
Right. And when's the last time you saw one in the wild? Right.
Well, if you find out they exist, they're in danger, because just like the Insulindian phasmid.
Mm-hmm.
I beat Disco Elysium today.
Okay.
Great game.
Oh, there was one more that I didn't mention, and I wanted to mention it because you mentioned about the ability to have clothes just sort of clean themselves.
Oh, okay.
And I wrote down the ability to have just like poof, any instant hairdo you want.
The ability to just have any hair. Does that mean you can like grow hair?
Yeah, it's very much like if you were playing Fallout, and you were standing in front of the mirror and doing your character select, and it just like cycle through the hair options. Except you could just do whatever you want. It wouldn't be limited to the 32 or whatever choices that are in the game.
So I think to make that one F tier, because that does sound like it'd be pretty good. It might be in D. I think that, but it has the color and general consistency appearance of pink cotton candy.
Oh.
Yeah. It's any style you want.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's got the cotton candy pink color.
Just like Mrs. Slocum from Are You Being Served?
Right. And I guess I should, not consistency, because it doesn't have to look like cotton candy. It can be any texture you want, but it's got to be that color. You can't change the color.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. That limits the usefulness.
True. Yeah.
Enough that I think we can make it F tier.
Yeah, we got to nerf all the two OP powers that we've come up with.
We have a lot of power creep happening.
Yeah. So we keep making them too good.
Right.
So listeners, let us know what F tier mermaid would you like to talk to, I guess. If you have any thoughts on that or anything else that we talked about, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog at vaguelyscientific.com, or you can like us on Facebook, or you can follow us on Blue Sky at Vaguely Scientific. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listener. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other great places that cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Whether they lay eggs or give live birth.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. We have a new design up there. It's all about Jeremiah's algae and lava balls.
They're so cheap, but not so cheap that you should be afraid.
Only available in Ohio. So thanks for Derek for making that, because it looks great and I love it so much.
So thank you to David for being our guest this week.
Yeah, no problem.
Yay. And for Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Dave.
Bye!
Toodaloo, everyone. I just want to mention in my notes at the very bottom, I wrote, what if they did some horrible thing where they gestated an egg for a while, and then the egg hatched inside of them, and then the baby was born?
Yeah.
And then I wrote, please no, go to bed. And then you said that exact thing happens in nature.